Hello everyone and welcome to Tech Studio. So today we are going to use Photoshop to create this design elevation. So let's get straight to it. So before we begin, there is this assets folder which I have attached in the description below. So if you are interested, get it in order to follow along. So in order to import anything here in Photoshop, we just need to simply drag and drop. So this is the very first page that we have, which is just a base color with no background at all, because this is a PDF file that we exported from ArchiCAD. And next is this shadows folder. When we drag and drop it on top of this and say OK, you can see that it fits perfectly well on top of this one. So I will say OK in order to place it. So we have these two layers. The very first one has the base color and the top one is the shadows layer. So I have done a video before that demonstrates how you can export ArchiCAD files that contain this information in a 3D document, such that we do not waste a lot of time as we try to juxtapose the two elevations. So let's get started. So first is we need to adjust the canvas, the working area that we're going to be working on. So we can use the crop tool for that, such that we have a little bit of the sky that is going to show up here and a little bit of the context that we are going to apply. I think I'm happy with this and I'll say OK to finish this. Once the canvas is set, I'm going to hide the shadows layer such that I can begin with this elevation. So first is to change the textures. So I have divided this video into sections, as you can see in the timestamps. So if you are particularly interested in a certain section, you can jump right to it. But for now, we will begin with the very first section, which is placing in the textures. In the assets folder, I have a textures folder within, and I have this texture which I would like to apply to this building. So all you have to do is drag and drop it in the tab bar of this Photoshop and it will be imported. So all we have to do is to go to edit and we say define pattern. We say OK, so that pattern has been defined. So we can even close that because we don't need it anymore. So we need to select the area onto which we are going to overlay the pattern. So with the magic wand, which is here, this icon here, we can come and begin to select. So right now, when I do select, you can see that it's only this area that's been selected, and that's because we have contiguous checked. So let's Ctrl D to deselect that, and then we can uncheck contiguous. And now when we select this, just make sure that your tolerance is a bit low. We can select all colors that are very similar in this layer, background layer. So once that is selected, we can go to this icon here, which is for creating a new fill, and we are going to create a new pattern fill. So that's the default one, and we want to choose the one which we have just created, which is this interesting stone cladding. So let's scale it down to something that looks pretty good. I think somewhere around 30 to 40. I think I'll go with 40 as the scale, and I say OK. So that has been applied. So the next texture that we like to place in, as usual, go into the project folder grab this texture, place it in here, so we can go to edit, define pattern, and we have it defined. So now we can close that tab, we don't need it anymore. And then we can get the magic wand with this background layer selected, and we select that area. So now we are including in some areas that we don't need. I think particularly this one we do not need, so we can check contiguous, such that when we alt space click here, we remove that area, which will be a different material. All right, so we go to this icon and put some pattern fill, which in this case is going to be this nice pattern. Let me try to zoom in so we can get the scale right. So we get the scale down to something that looks just about right, and I think something in teens is good. So about 13 looks great. The next pattern is here, and I have them loaded such that we do not waste time. So W for the magic wand with this layer selected. So select that and make sure that we can undo that, make sure that contiguous is unchecked, and then we can reselect that white, and all of that white is going to be filled with a pattern, which is going to be this stucco finish, and we can scale it down to something that looks about right. So let's zoom in and see the scale as it looks like in proportion to the windows right there. Yeah, it also works well for the teens, 13 there. So the next one is this area here where we have the foundation coming out. So we will select the background layer with W or the magic wand right there. We select that, and everything else is selected here. I think I like the selection. Apart from, again, we need to check contiguous such that we can alt click to remove these parts which I don't need. For example, I don't think I need a brick texture at the entrance. And with that done, these ones we can leave them, they won't have even an effect as much. So let's fill with pattern, and the pattern is going to be the block which is here. Obviously too big, take it down to something like, yeah, like 30. Great. So 20 something will work, and that is done. So next, with contiguous still selected, we can select the background layer, hit W, and we pick this one, and we will put a pattern of the scratch metal that is present. So let's zoom in so you can see that scratch metal. Let me scale it down to look right. Yeah, about 10. Great, I think I'm happy with that. So the next material is the glass, the window glass. So we will, with that background light selected, so let's select this, or Control D, uncheck contiguous, and we select, and we can see all glass has been selected. And this time, instead of a pattern, we can decide to fill with a solid color. Well, obviously that's too dark. We need to make it a little lighter because of the nature of the drawing. So I think I like that. Maybe we can gray it further. Yeah, I like that. So also we can create a new layer, Ctrl Shift N, for the background, in order to fill it with like white. So with this white selected, we can go to the paint bucket tool and just fill the background such that we start to appreciate the building of the checked surface. It's starting to come alive. I also feel that we can add another layer of glass material over these two, because balcony glasses tend to be a bit darker than the actual glass of the building. So with the background layer selected, let's check contiguous such that we can be able to select one by one. Shift click in order to add these different panels, and we will go to this icon here and we can fill with a solid color, which is going to be black. And obviously it's beneath this one, so you want to put it just a bit above that one, and we can go in and reduce such that it's not too much, but it still stands out from the rest of the glass material. All right, so one more thing we can do to the glass, we can add a bit of realism by making it reflect, because currently we have added a solid black color that gives the glass depth to show that it's trying to show us what is inside the building, but we also need it to reflect things that are in front of it. And we will use, for that, we will go to the assets folder. We will use this contextual sky that we are going to put in the background. And for now, we will just use it to reflect on top of the glass. So let's select these glass and mark such that it appears as though it's reflecting. So let's first unlink. Let's move this texture down. I think the horizon is a bit high here. I think that horizon is much better. And also could scale it out a bit more. Yeah, and position it to show the lower parts. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. But in order for it to be a reflection, first of all, since it's a reflection, it needs to be blurred. So, and for it to be blurred, let's add it as a smart. It's already a smart object, which is good for us. But if yours is not, be sure to change it into a smart object. So we go to filter, blur. Let's use a Gaussian blur. And when we start to blur it, it starts to feel like a reflection. About less than 10, yeah. About 8 is good for the reflection. The other thing is that for the reflection, we want to change that layer from normal blending mode to screen, because that's what light does. The bright parts of the reflection will just make the part bright. And we can also double click the layer and we go to the layer styles, and under here in blend if we can take it away from the dark areas. Remember, it's a dark glass, so it's now showing up, so we can smooth it out. Let's alt to smooth this transition here, such that we can see a hint of what's inside, but again we appreciate the sort of reflection that is being made in the windows and doors. I think I'm happy with that. Yeah, nice transition, and it's looking good overall. Great. So now we will go to this layer which we imported first. Let's enable it right there. And we are going to apply a multiply blending mode such that the dark parts are made darker, and that looks good because it adds depth to the drawing. And when we do this, we start to notice the things which are in the background layer, and that's the colors that start to pop off. If you do not like them, you can come to the background layer and add a hue saturation and take all the saturation down such that you don't have those colors anymore showing up in the background layer. And I think that looks quite good. And then also this there right here, let's first disable this a bit. This there could also be improved by, in the assets folder, we have something here which is this polished brush metal. Let's drop it in here. Great. Obviously it's in the wrong position. Let's scale it a bit down. Yeah, about there. And you see what I'm talking about in a sec. Let's change the blend mode. Let's first limit it to that area. So let's, with the background layer selected, hit W, and we have that selected, and we can mask this layer here, which is, you come here and click the mask tool, and we have masked it, so it gives it a nice sort of metal feel, but we need that to be just on screen such that it shows up on top of our metal scratch. So let's maybe we can reduce the opacity, or even first with this selected, we can scale it a bit down. Oh, we have to unlink it first. So with this one selected, we can Control T and scale it down. Let me see how that looks like. Yeah, I think I do like that. So let's bring back our shadows. Yeah, that looks like a reflection on the metal when the light hits it. And another adjustment is to tweak how these things do look. First, I think this stucco material is supposed to be a bit brighter because, you know, this is the white color of the background. I think it should be more close to that. So let's hide this in a sec because it's preventing us from selecting this. And then we can go to the adjustments, and then we add a curves adjustment such that we make it a little brighter. Make sure to clip it to the layer beneath, so we can try and make it brighter, make it come close to this background colors of sorts. I think that's good. This is before, this is after, much better. And also I do think that this pattern here could also use a bit of contrast in order for us to appreciate those lightness and shadows. So let's make it overall more contrasted. Of course, clip it to the layer beneath, which is this pattern here. And we can, yes, increase the brightness such that we have the texture a bit more appreciated. So let's contrast it more and add a bit of brightness in order to have the texture more powerfully revealed. For this texture here, we could add like a levels adjustment. So let's see. We need it to make sure you clip it to the pattern, and I think yes, it can also use a bit of this. We need to take it a bit up here or down to just tweak the things to your liking such that they do not hide a lot of information and neither expose so much. So let's bring back our shadows. Yeah, I think overall the thing is starting to look quite impressive. So for the context, we need to create an elevation line for this elevation. So P for the pen tool, and we draw just a simple line. Click first point, hold shift, click the second point, and I think it should be about 30 pixels. Yeah, that's enough for a elevation. And then V in order to move it to place. You can actually use the arrows to place it precisely where you like to see it. So that's the sort of the elevation line that we have. And because of this line, we can decide to hide everything underneath it in order to use it as, and I think let's first stretch it a bit. So you need to press A or this angle here in order to move these points of a pen tool. So shift in order to keep it, and that's okay. Select the Mark You tool by M and select that area, and we need to Mark You it from the background layer here, so we can click on the mask, invert it such that we do not see anything beneath it. And so this layer we can alt take it also to make it also show on the shadow, this shadow layer, such that both the background and the shadow do not show us things which are underneath here. And that's exactly what I wanted. So we have a clean elevation here, which you can work with. So let's drop in some things that are going to make the elevation interesting. First, I like this texture, which is a concrete texture. You can throw it in, and I'm going to maximize it to fit the whole background, and I can mask it. Let's invert the mask by Ctrl I, and we come in here. Let's draw around here and fill this one. We can use either a brush or a paint bucket tool. With the white selected, we can fill it in here. So we have that. Let's put it under the shape such that that line is evident. Good. So that's the first layer, but on this layer I like to show that sort of gradient. You can brush it, you can add in a gradient, but let me brush it in order for it to look a little bit, you know, different. Add a new layer. Let's Ctrl Shift N and add an earth gradient, and in here we can decide to have our brush, and we change the color to black, and right click and select a smooth brush, and with the Mark You tool, let's limit it to this area because we don't definitely want to draw in our drawing. So with this layer selected, with the brush tool there, we can begin to draw this interesting stuff. Just be creative and draw it there. I think that's good. You can reduce the opacity if it's becoming too much. So next is bringing in the actual background. So let's bring the background from this folder here, in the assets folder, in the background. I do have this background which we can drag and drop it in. And let's see, let's first reduce the opacity and sort of see where the horizon is for the image which we inputted earlier. So when we push it up a bit, it's about there, so they match a bit. So for this one, maybe, just maybe, we can flip it. So right click and flip horizontal so that it doesn't feel similar. But anyway, no one is even gonna notice, so I like this. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So let's drag it all the way down and place it just above the background. Yeah, but of course it's inheriting the hue and saturation, so we want to limit the hue and saturation with Alt to the background layer, such that now this layer, when we bring it all the way up, it's not being affected, which is what we want, and pretty cool. When we go to the textures folder, let's add this texture here, which we have used before. I liked that when we add it just on top of this background, it brings out a nice effect. Let's take the opacity down. Yeah, it does bring a pretty cool effect. And we can take both the blue sky opacity and this concrete opacity down, such that they give room for the building to show. And that is it. So now we can also add in the other background features, like this one here for the vegetation. So let's drop it in here, and I think I use this one, so let's mark you just this. That's what I need. So V to move it, and I will place it in here. Of course, Ctrl T to transform it and make it bigger. And when it fills up the canvas, we obviously okay, this thing is disturbing. Let me hide it for a sec. Just move it down. Yeah, we could even make it taller. Why not? So let's bring it back. Looks pretty good. And we have some birds flying in the air. Obviously these we need to, yeah, we can keep them under this. So let's hide it again and move this with arrows up so that we can see it. Yes, now we can pick it, take it up. Oh, these are too big. Scale it down, and you can rotate and or put in the area you like. Say okay. Yeah, and the humans too, so you can drop them in. And I think we need to first refine them. Let's bring them to a new layer here. So we pick, let me show you just how I did one. So let's use the crop tool and finish for this one. So we will drag this man and put him around this glass area, because I like to show you how I did this one. So for the man, we can bring him all the way on top of the building. So with Ctrl T, we can increase the height. We're holding Alt so we don't lose the aspect ratio. We say okay, and V, yeah, the height is fine. So now we can take him to somewhere like here. So if you wanted to put this guy at around this area, first of all, you want to mask this area. So with the Mark U tool, you can select this portion and mask it out. Of course, you need to invert it such that that's the part that you see. And now also with this area selected, of course with the background area, let's use the background. Let's select this glass here, and now we will select this layer and duplicate it with Ctrl J, such that now this portion, the area of the man which is in this glass portion, is on another layer and we can reduce the opacity to make it believable, because when you look at something through glass, it doesn't look the same way off glass, so that looks a bit more realistic. Anyway, let's bring back our layer right there. That looks pretty cool, and that's what you have to do. So I went on and put in more characters, and of course once you're done you need to collect all these layers by Ctrl Shift Alt E in order to make all one layer and start to add in final adjustments. So you can add in maybe a curves to make this thing a bit more, contrasted. You can even reduce the opacities. So this is without it, then when you increase it, it starts to look okay, I think. Yeah, so you can also add another adjustment, maybe a color lookup, and you check through the presets, whichever you like, and that looks pretty cool, right? Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe below if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.